The silver ship cut through Earth's blue sky like a knife through silk. Dr. Kim. Hannah stood at the observation window of the International Space Station, her breath fogging the glass as she watched the massive vessel descend toward the planet below. Her heart pounded against her ribs. After decades of searching the stars for signs of life, life had finally come to them. "Control, this is Captain Park Jin-ho." The voice crackled through the station's speakers. Park sat hunched over his communication console, his weathered fingers dancing across the controls. "The vessel is requesting permission to land at the Seoul Diplomatic Complex. They're transmitting in perfect Korean." Hannah turned from the window, her dark eyes wide with wonder and fear. "Perfect Korean? How is that possible?" "They say they've been watching us," Park replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "They call themselves the Velthari." The world held its breath as the alien ship touched down in the heart of Seoul. Crowds gathered behind military barriers, their faces pressed against the metal fencing as they strained to catch a glimpse of humanity's first visitors. News cameras rolled, broadcasting the historic moment to billions of viewers across the globe. The ship's hull was unlike anything human engineers had ever seen. It appeared to be made of living crystal, its surface rippling like water in the afternoon sun. Strange symbols pulsed with soft blue light along its sides, and the air around it shimmered with an energy that made nearby electronics flicker and spark. When the hatch opened, a figure emerged that would change the course of human history forever. Ambassador Kess was tall and thin, his limbs stretching nearly twice the length of a human's. His skin was pale as moonlight, and his large black eyes seemed to hold the weight of countless stars. Moved with fluid grace despite Earth's heavy gravity, each step measured and purposeful. The assembled Earth delegation waited in the diplomatic complex's main hall. President Moon Jae-won stood at the center, flanked by military officials and scientists from around the world. Dr. Lee Min-ho, Earth's most brilliant physicist, fidgeted with his tablet, his hands shaking with excitement. General Cho Dae-ho maintained his stern military bearing, but even he couldn't hide the wonder in his eyes. "People of Earth," Kess began, his voice carrying a strange musical quality that seemed to resonate in their bones. "We are the Velthari, and we have traveled far to reach you." The translator devices weren't needed. Somehow every person in the room heard the aliens' words in their native language, the meaning flowing directly into their minds with crystal clarity. "We have watched your species for many cycles," Kess continued, his dark eyes scanning the assembled humans. "We have seen you struggle with the limitations of your world, the energy crisis that threatens your civilization, over-dwindling resources, the desperate search for solutions that always seem just beyond your reach." President Moon stepped forward, her voice steady despite the magnitude of the moment. "Why have you come to us now? What do you want?" Sound that might have been laughter escaped Kess's throat. "Want? We want nothing from you. Instead, we offer you a gift, the gift of unlimited power." The demonstration that followed left the human delegation speechless. Kess gestured to his attendants, who brought forth devices that seemed to defy the laws of physics. A fusion reactor the size of a city block was compressed into a device no larger than a briefcase. Energy readings that should have been impossible danced across their instruments. "Your sun produces more energy in 1 second than your entire civilization has used in all of human history," Kess explained. "We can show you how to harness not just your sun but any star in the galaxy. Distance becomes meaningless. Resource. Scarcity becomes a memory." Dr. Lee Min-ho wept openly as he examined the alien technology. Equations that had puzzled humanity's greatest minds for centuries were solved with elegant simplicity. The faster-than-light engines would allow Earth's children to walk on distant worlds within their lifetimes. But Dr. Kim Hannah, watching from her position near the back of the hall, noticed something the others missed. While Kess spoke of gifts, in generosity, his large black eyes held a different emotion entirely. She had seen that look before in the eyes of patients in the hospital where she had worked before joining the space program. It was the look of someone carrying an unbearable burden. "Why us?" she asked quietly, her voice cutting through the excited chatter of her colleagues. "Why Earth? Why now?" The room fell silent. Kess turned his attention to her, and for a moment his composed mask slipped. In that instant, Hannah saw not an advanced alien offering salvation, but a being haunted by choices made long ago. "Because you are young," Kes said finally, his voice barely audible. "Untouched by the burden of choice we have carried for too long. Perhaps you will succeed where we could not." The words hung in the air like a warning, though none of the humans understood their true meaning. Not yet. They were too dazzled by the promise of unlimited power, too eager to embrace the technology that would transform their world. Only Dr. Kim. Hannah felt the chill of premonition creep down her spine as she looked into the alien's ancient, desperate eyes. 6 months had passed since the silver ship first touched Earth's soil. The world had transformed beyond recognition. The great cities of humanity now pulsed with alien energy, their skylines pierced by crystalline towers that hummed with power beyond human dreams. In New York, London, and Tokyo, massive fusion plants no larger than office buildings provided electricity for millions. The air was cleaner, the lights brighter, and hope burned in human hearts like never before. Dr. Kim Hannah stood in her laboratory deep beneath the streets of Seoul. But she felt no joy as she watched the energy readings dance across her screens. While the rest of humanity celebrated their new golden age, a cold fear had been growing in her chest like ice around her heart. Something was wrong with the Velthari gift, something that made her skin crawl every time she looked at the alien technology. "The power output is incredible," said Lieutenant Yang Soo-yoon, her research partner, as he adjusted the scanner settings. "But I still can't figure out how it works. The fusion reaction should be impossible with our understanding of physics." Hannah nodded, her dark eyes focused on the data streaming across her computer. "That's because it's not just fusion. Look at this." She pointed to a series of readings that pulsed with strange patterns. "The reactors are drawing energy from something else, something the Velthari never told us about."
Nice.
The breakthrough came at 3 in the morning, when most of Seoul slept peacefully above them. Hannah had been working for 18 hours straight, her eyes burning from staring at screens, when she finally found the answer buried in the alien technical files. The truth hit her like a physical blow, making her stumble backward from her workstation. "Come look at this," she called, her voice shaking. "You need to see this right now." Young hurried over, his face creased with concern. On the screen before them was a detailed analysis of the fuel source that powered every Velthari reactor on Earth. It wasn't hydrogen or any other element they recognized. It was something called Velanium, and the more they learned about it, the more terrified they became. "According to this data, Velanium can only be found in one place," Hannah whispered. "The cores of living planets. Worlds with active biospheres, with life." Yang's face went pale. "Living planets. But that means ... It means to power their technology, worlds have to die," Hannah finished. "The Velanium doesn't just exist naturally in planetary cores.
Okay.
It forms there created by the life force of entire ecosystems. And when you extract it..." The files showed the horrifying truth. Velanium extraction wasn't mining in any sense that humans understood. It was a process that reached deep into a planet's core and pulled out the very essence that made life possible. Magnetic field would collapse first, then the atmosphere would bleed away into space. Oceans would boil and freeze. Every living thing would die, leaving behind only a cold, dead rock floating in the void. "We have to tell someone," Yang said, reaching for his communication device. "The government, the military, someone who can stop this." But Hannah caught his hand. "Stop what?" "The reactors are already built. The energy's already flowing. And look at this." She pulled up another file, one that made her stomach turn. "This is a list of worlds the Velthari have harvested. Over the past 10,000 years, the list was endless. Thousands upon thousands of worlds, each one marked with the same notation: extraction complete. Biosphere terminated. Population 0. They're not explorers," Hannah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're not even conquerors. They're refugees, Yang, wanderers who destroyed their own world and have been destroying others ever since." The files revealed the full scope of the Velthari tragedy. Their homeworld, Velthar Prime, had been a paradise of crystal cities and floating gardens. But when their energy needs grew beyond what their star could provide, they had discovered Valanium in their own planet's core. The first extraction had been small, careful, but the power it provided was intoxicating, and soon they needed more, and more, and more. They killed their own world, Yang said, staring at the images of Velthar Prime. Once it had been green and blue, covered in vast oceans and continents that sparkled with life. Now it was nothing but gray rock and empty craters. Killed their own planet. The pattern was always the same. The Velthari would arrive at a world, sometimes inhabited, sometimes not. They would begin the extraction process, drawing Valanium from the core until the planet could no longer support life. Then they would move on, their ships loaded with the crystalline fuel, searching for the next world to drain. 10,000 years, Hannah repeated, scrolling through the endless list of dead worlds. They've been doing this for 10,000 years, and now they want us to do the same. The implications were staggering. Earth's new fusion plants were just the beginning. Soon humanity would need more Valanium to power their growing civilization. The Velthari had already provided the locations of several nearby worlds where extraction could begin. In the files, they were listed as suitable candidates for harvesting. They're trying to make us just like them, Hannah said, her voice filled. With horror, they're turning us into planet killers. Yang slumped into his chair, the weight of the discovery crushing down on him. What do we do? How do we stop this? Hannah looked at the screens showing Earth's cities powered by alien energy. Knowing that millions of people were living their lives in blissful ignorance of the price that would soon be demanded. The Velthari had given humanity a gift, but like all gifts that seemed too good to be true, it came with a cost that no one had imagined. First, we gather proof, she said quietly. Then we find someone who will listen. And then we pray we're not already too late. The stars were cold and distant as Captain Park. Jinho's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. He'd been making this journey for 3 months, leading a small team of scientists and engineers on what the official records called a routine survey mission. But there was nothing routine about what they were really doing. They were here to witness something that would change everything humanity thought they knew about their alien benefactors. Captain, we're picking up massive energy signatures from the 4th planet, reported engineer Kim Taeyong from his station near the back of the cramped bridge. His young face was lit by the glow of his instruments, and his voice carried a note of excitement that made Park's stomach tighten with dread. Show me, Park ordered, though part of him wished he could turn the ship around and fly back to Earth without ever seeing what lay ahead. The main screen flickered to life, displaying an image that took Park's breath away. The planet hanging in the void before them had once been beautiful beyond words. Even now, through the ship's powerful sensors, they could see the ghost of what it had been. Vast continents that had once been green with forests and grasslands. Ocean beds that had contained water bluer than Earth's skies. Polar ice caps that had gleamed white in the light of the system's yellow sun. But now, the world was dying before their eyes. My God, whispered Dr. Kim Hannah, who had insisted on coming along despite the dangers. She stood behind Park's chair, her hands gripping the back so tightly her knuckles had turned white. What have they done to it? Massive towers of crystalline metal pierced the planet's surface like needles through skin. Each tower was easily 100 kilometers tall, their tops disappearing into the thin atmosphere that still clung to the world. They pulsed with the same blue energy that powered Earth's cities, but here the light seemed wrong somehow, hungry and cold. The atmospheric readings are catastrophic, Kim Tae-young reported, his voice now stripped of any excitement. Oxygen levels are dropping by the hour. The magnetic field is fluctuating wildly. This planet is dying, Captain. Maybe has weeks left before it becomes completely uninhabitable. Park ordered the ship closer, though every instinct screamed at him to flee. Through the observation ports, they could see the Velthari at work on the planet's surface. The aliens moved between the extraction towers with mechanical precision, their tall forms bent over control panels and monitoring equipment, but there was something deeply wrong with the way they moved. There was no conversation between them, no sign of satisfaction or accomplishment. They worked like machines, like beings who had forgotten how to feel anything but the endless need to continue their task. They look like prisoners, Hannah observed quietly, like they were trapped in their own technology. The extraction process was horrifying to witness. The towers drove deep into the planet's core, following veins of Valanium that had formed over millions of years. As the crystalline substance was drawn upward, the planet itself began to convulse.
Ow.
Earthquakes shook the continents. The remaining atmosphere flickered and sparked as the magnetic field failed. In the distance, they could see entire mountain ranges crumbling into dust. This was a living world, Kim Taeyong said, his voice barely audible. According to the geological scans, it supported a complex ecosystem less than a year ago. There were forests, oceans, maybe even primitive life forms. And now there was nothing but rock and metal and the slow death of a world that had taken billions of years to create. The team spent 3 days documenting what they saw. Though Park knew that no amount of data could truly capture the horror of watching a planet die. When they finally returned to Earth, they carried with them evidence that would shake the foundations of human civilization. But first, Dr. Kim Hannah had requested a private meeting with Ambassador Kess. The meeting took place in a small conference room deep within the Seoul diplomatic complex. Kess sat across from Hannah, his large black eyes reflecting the soft light of the room's lamps. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Hannah broke the silence. "We saw what you're doing to Kepler 442, she said simply. "We know what Valanium really is. We know what it costs to harvest it." Kess's expression didn't change, but something in his posture seemed to collapse inward. "I wondered how long it would take your species to discover the truth," he said quietly. "You are more curious than most, more persistent." "Why didn't you tell us?" Hannah asked. "Why didn't you warn us about the price?" For the first time since his arrival on Earth, Kess seemed to show genuine emotion. His form appeared to fade in the dim light, as if he were becoming translucent. "Because we hoped you would find another way. We hoped that a younger species, one not yet trapped by the hunger for power, might succeed where we failed." "Failed at what?" "At stopping," Kess replied. "We were once like you, Dr. Hannah. We believed technology would solve all our problems. We thought we could control the power we unleashed. But Valanium, it becomes necessary, essential, and once you begin harvesting, you cannot stop." Hannah leaned forward, her heart breaking as she saw the truth in the alien's ancient eyes. "You're addicted to it. You're slaves to it," Kess corrected. "We destroyed our own world first, thinking we could find others. But each world we harvest requires more energy to process, more Valanium to power our ships and cities. We have become a plague upon the galaxy, and we cannot stop ourselves." "Then why give us the same technology?" Hannah demanded. "Why curse us with the same fate?" Kess was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "Because you are young enough to perhaps find another way, or ... We..." He paused, and Hannah could see the weight of 10,000 years of guilt in his expression. "To continue what we started when we are gone." The room fell silent, except for the hum of the building's air circulation system. Outside, the city of Seoul continued its daily life. Powered by alien energy, unaware that their salvation might be their doom, the Great Assembly Hall of the United Nations had never seen a debate like this one. For 3 months, representatives from every nation on Earth had gathered to decide the future of humanity itself. The air was thick with tension as President Moon Jae-won stepped up to the podium, her face pale but determined. Behind her, the flags of 200 countries hung motionless, as if the world itself was holding its breath. "Fellow citizens of Earth," she began, her voice echoing through the vast chamber. "Today we face the greatest choice in human history. The Valtheri have shown us 2 paths forward. We can embrace their technology and become masters of the galaxy with power beyond our wildest dreams. Or we can refuse their gift and remain bound to our single world, struggling with the same problems that have plagued us for centuries." In the front row, General Cho Dae-ho sat rigid in his military uniform, his weathered hands clasped tightly in his lap. Around him, Other military leaders from across the globe nodded in agreement. They had been pushing for acceptance of the Velthari technology for weeks, arguing that humanity needed to seize this opportunity before it was too late. "We cannot let fear hold us back," General Cho had argued just days before. "Yes, the harvesting process destroys worlds. But we could start with dead planets, worlds that have no life to begin with. We could protect Earth while still gaining the power we need to defend ourselves. Think of what we could accomplish with unlimited energy. We could end poverty, cure diseases, explore the entire galaxy." But across the aisle, Dr. Kim Hanna sat with her team of scientists, their faces grim with the weight of what they had discovered. For months, they had been working around the clock, searching for an alternative to the Velthari technology. The breakthrough had come just 2 weeks ago when Dr. Lee Min-ho had made a discovery that changed everything. The Valanium doesn't just exist in planetary cores, Lee had explained to the assembled scientists. It forms there, created by the life force of entire ecosystems. But what if we could reverse the process? What if instead of extracting life force, we could enhance it? The theory was revolutionary. Instead of draining worlds to power their civilization, humanity could work with planetary ecosystems to generate energy. It would be slower, much slower than the Velthari method. But it would be sustainable, capable of powering human civilization. For millions of years, without destroying a single world. It's not about becoming masters of the galaxy, Dr. Hanna had argued before the assembly. It's about becoming partners with it. We could help dead worlds come back to life instead of killing living ones. We could spread life throughout the universe. Instead of destroying it, the debate had raged for hours each day, with passionate speeches on both sides. Some representatives argued that humanity had a right to use whatever technology was available to ensure their survival. Others insisted that the price was too high, that becoming planet killers would destroy everything that made humanity worth saving. Ambassador Kess sat in the gallery above the main floor, his tall form barely fitting in the human-sized seats. His dark eyes watched the proceedings with an intensity that made several delegates uncomfortable. He had been invited to observe, but not participate, and he had remained silent throughout the entire debate. But Dr. Hanna could see something in his expression that she had never seen before. "The vote will now be taken," President Moon announced, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of the moment. "All those in favor of accepting the Velthari technology and joining their harvesting operations, please signify by raising your right hand." The counting seemed to take forever. Hands rose across the assembly hall, each one representing millions of people who would live with the consequences of this decision. The military supporters raised their hands without hesitation. Several industrial nations followed suit, their representatives arguing that economic necessity left them no choice. All those opposed to accepting the Velthari technology, please signify by raising your right hand. More hands rose, some quickly, others after long moments of hesitation. The smaller nations, those who had seen the effects of environmental destruction firsthand, voted overwhelmingly against acceptance. The scientists and environmental groups had lobbied hard, and their influence showed in the final count. The secretary general stepped forward to announce the results. The vote is 98 in favor of acceptance, 102 opposed. The motion to accept Velthari technology is defeated by a margin of 4 votes. The hall erupted in chaos. Some delegates cheered, others shouted. In anger, General Cho sat motionless, his face a mask of disappointment and fear. He had genuinely believed that humanity needed this technology to survive, and now he worried that they had chosen extinction over expansion. But Dr. Hanna felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She looked up at Ambassador Kess and saw something remarkable in his ancient eyes. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Velthari ambassador was smiling. The moment of triumph was short-lived. Lieutenant Yang Se-yoon burst into the hall, his face flushed with panic. "Dr. Hanna," he called out, ignoring the protests of the security guards. "The Velthari fleet is moving. They're heading for Alpha Centauri. If we don't join them, they're going to harvest those worlds anyway." President Moon's face went pale. "How long do we have?" 6 hours, Yang replied. "Maybe less. Their ships are already accelerating out of Earth's orbit. The assembly hall fell silent. The vote had been taken, but the real test was just beginning. Earth had chosen to reject the path of destruction. But that didn't mean they could stop the Velthari from continuing their ancient harvest. The next few hours would determine whether humanity's choice meant anything at all. In the gallery above, Ambassador Kess stood slowly, his form seeming to shimmer in the artificial light. For 10,000 years, his people had been slaves too, their technology, unable to break free from the cycle of destruction they had created. But perhaps, just perhaps, these young humans might find a way to do what the Velthari never could. The fate of two civilizations now hung in the balance. The stars of the Alpha Centauri system burned cold and bright as Captain Park Jin-ho's ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. His weathered hands gripped the command chair as he stared at the view screen, watching the massive Velthari fleet spread across the void like a dark cloud. Dozens of crystalline ships moved in perfect formation, their extraction towers already extended toward the second planet in the system. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Velthari flagship," reported Communications Officer Jung Min-soo, his young voice tight with tension. "Ambassador Kess wants to speak with you." Park nodded grimly. Behind him, Dr. Kim Hannah stood at the science station, her face pale but determined. The bridge of Earth's newest ship, the New Dawn, was cramped and basic compared to the alien vessels before them. But it represented something the Velthari had forgotten how to build: hope for the future instead of hunger for power. "Put him through," Park ordered. The main screen flickered, and Ambassador Kess appeared. His tall form seemed more translucent than before, as if the weight of 10,000 years was finally wearing him down. "Captain Park," he said, his voice carrying across the void. "You should not have come. This is not your concern." "It is now," Park replied, his voice steady, despite the fear that gnawed at his stomach. "We know what you're planning to do to these worlds. Can't let you destroy them." Kess's large black eyes seemed dim. "You cannot stop us. Your ships are few, and we have been doing this for millennia. Stand aside, and we will harvest only the dead worlds in this system. The living planet will be spared." "No more worlds," Park said firmly. "Dead or alive. Choose differently, Ambassador. We choose the harder path." The silence that followed seemed to stretch forever. Around them, the Velthari fleet continued its slow approach toward the inner planets, their extraction towers gleaming in the starlight. But something had changed. The alien ships were slowing, their perfect formation beginning to waver. "You do not understand," Kess said finally. "Without Valanium, our ships will fail. Our cities will go dark, our people will die, and learn another way." Dr. Kim Hannah stepped forward, her voice carrying across the bridge. "We have found one. Let us show you." What happened next would be remembered as the shortest war in human history. The confrontation lasted only minutes, but it changed everything. The Velthari ships, expecting easy surrender, found themselves facing something they had never encountered before: resistance powered by creation instead of destruction. Earth's ships were smaller, fewer in number, but they carried something the Velthari had forgotten existed. Dr. Lee Min-ho's breakthrough technology didn't just generate energy, it enhanced life itself. As the human vessels moved between the alien fleet and the inner planets, their life enhancement arrays activated, sending waves of creative energy through the void. The effect on the Velthari was immediate and devastating. For the first time in 10,000 years, they felt the presence of life-giving energy instead of life-draining power. The sensation was overwhelming. Across their fleet, the ancient aliens began to weep, their crystalline forms shimmering with tears they had forgotten how to shed. "Stop," came Kess's voice over the communication channel, but it was not a command. It was a plea. "Please, stop. We had forgotten what life feels like." Battle, if it could be called that, was over before it truly began. The Velthari ships powered down their extraction towers and withdrew to a safe distance. But they did not flee. Instead, they waited, watching as the human vessels moved toward a barren moon in the outer system. Dr. Kim Hannah stood on the bridge of the New Dawn, her heart pounding as she watched the readings on her instruments. "Activate the ecosystem enhancement array," she ordered. Full power. The moon below them was nothing but rock and dust, a dead world that had never known the touch of life. But as the enhancement array focused its energy on the barren surface, something miraculous began to happen. The rock began to change, its chemical composition shifting as organic compounds formed in the dust. Water vapor appeared in the thin atmosphere, and primitive microorganisms began to emerge from the transformed soil. "It's working," whispered engineer Kim Tae-young, his voice filled with wonder. "The moon is coming alive." Communications officer Jung Min-soo looked up from his station, his face bright with excitement. "Captain, we're receiving transmissions from the Velthari fleet. They're asking ... They're asking to learn." Park turned to Dr. Hannah, seeing the same hope in her eyes that he felt in his own heart. "Can we teach them?" "It won't be easy," Hannah replied. "They've been addicted to destruction for 10,000 years. Breaking free from that will take time, maybe generations. But yes, I think we can help them." The process of teaching the Velthari was slow and painful. Their entire civilization had been built around the consumption of life force, and learning to create instead of destroy went against every instinct they had developed. Many of their ships were too damaged by millennia of harvesting to be converted. Some of their people were too far gone, too consumed by their hunger for Valanium to change. But others learned. Ambassador Kess was among the first, his ancient form slowly regaining color as he worked alongside human scientists. He learned to operate the life enhancement arrays, to nurture dead worlds back to life, instead of draining living ones to death. The transformation of the Velthari would take generations to complete. Earth's expansion into space would be measured in decades rather than years as they focused on perfecting their sustainable technology. But as Dr. Kim Hannah watched the first forests begin to grow on the once dead moon, she knew they had chosen correctly. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders. There were countless worlds to explore, countless civilizations to meet, countless mysteries to solve. But the greatest wonder was not the power to take whatever you wanted. It was the wisdom to know what was worth preserving, and the courage to choose creation over destruction, even when destruction was easier.